welcome to Sub Rosa. All right, Eugene, you have one for us?
Yeah, I don't want to lard it again. It's this is a rough one for me. So anyway, I'll just read it and I'll editorialize later. Here we go. Uh, I'm pregnant with my first child. I'm reading right now. I am in fact Eugene, not pregnant. And I'm worried about how it's going to impact my career. I work for a mid-sized company with only 12 weeks of family leave, and my husband's job has only 3 weeks of parental leave. We don't have family around to help, and we don't make enough to afford a nanny or for one of us to stay home. So a huge slice of our income will go into childcare cost. I've worked hard to get to where I am, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose all my momentum.
This is hard. In fact, Eugene and I were just talking before I hit the record button. Like, we need to do a
Yeah.
whole show about this, and we need to get some, like moms that are going through this now to talk to us. But I guess a couple of things is to first acknowledge and name that 12 weeks of maternity leave is a travesty.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of women don't get that. I mean, statistically, women will get much less, or pregnant people who give birth, will get less than that.
Yeah.
And most civilized countries, you get 6 months, even a year, which is good for parents. It's good for the child. It's good all around.
It's
So,
good for society.
right.
In case you've not noticed, there was an article out this week about how worldwide people are choosing to not breed. This is a problem for demographers all over the world, from country to country. In Germany, I think maternal leave is like 16 months,
Right.
right? They're realist over there and also have problems with plunging birth rates.
Right.
So, sorry.
So the first thing is, if you're listening to this and you aren't pregnant, think about getting politically active, right? Think about working for, in Washington State recently, they instituted a statewide family leave program, right?
Mm,
So that everybody can get, I believe it's 12 weeks of paid leave, which is, it's a start because they didn't even used to have that. So think about getting politically active. But for this particular woman, uh, a couple suggestions. First, get informed and get some support, right?
mm,
So it is helpful as a mother to find other mothers who are in a similar life stage. Ideally, women that are also working. Maybe they're at your company, maybe they're in similar companies. Even if these are not women you would have hung out with if you didn't have kids at the same time, it's really helpful to have that, even if it's just a chat group, right? A group text. You want to have that support from other people. As far as your career, talk to your manager about your career before you go on maternity leave. What's your 5 year plan? Even if you're
mm.
not going to be at this company for the next 5 years, just mapping it out, recognizing there will be a period of time when your child is in nursery school. Your child will go to kindergarten. There is it's a long life, and
Yeah.
this is a few years, and maybe it'll help you to focus on kind of what you want that to look like. And then the last one is, I think it's a good idea to let go of expectations, right? Like, everything's going to change for you after you have a child. Some of those changes will be challenging, some of those changes will be joyful and wonderful. Just let go of expectations. Don't expect to get back to your pre baby weight ever. Don't expect your house to be clean. Recognize that your marriage is going to change. How you think about work is going to change. Everything's going to change. And just try to roll with it. Try to let go of the things that you can let go of, right? Like, my friends and I, for many years when our kids were little, had kind of a, like, just don't look down. Like, I'm not looking at what's on the ground. Like, I
Yeah.
might notice that my feet are sticking to the kitchen floor because there's so much spilled orange juice. We have no judgment. We have a judgment free zone, right? So
Right.
just prepare yourself for the fact that things are going to change, and that some of those changes might be joyful. What do
And
you think from the dad perspective?
I also noted I've seen a change, right? I started my first job out of college was in 1986, 87, and some of the things that we were talking about then, had I mentioned it to the guys at the defense publication where I got my first job, would be like, "What, are you crazy? You're not doing that." But over time, certain numbers of big companies have actually made accommodations for their employees who have children. Now, you say mid-sized company in your letter. I understand that. Larger companies have actually said this is a serious issue. We're going to address it, and have made, they, in addition to massage chairs and people picking up dry cleaning at your cubicle or your office, like they exist in many of these companies around here in Silicon Valley. They've also started to do uh, uh, have on-site childcare, right? So that you can, I mean, depending on how creepy you think this is, you could bring your child to work, you drop them off at the work-based childcare, and but I say, okay, these are large companies who are doing this, but you do realize that this came from in 1986, 87, something that would have been risable to the average executive in 1987. Now is at least a valley standard for many of the companies here, because they've come to a real politic moment to realize these people, men are actually taking, they're not being aggressive about taking it, but they're actually taking paternity leave. But again, as you started out to say, the policies here in the US, where we're not having problems with the birth rate necessarily, are not the greatest. I mean, if you contemplate leaving a 3-month-old alone, it gives me I have anxiety
Well,
just
to
thinking
be
about
fair,
leaving
they're not
a 3-month-old
alone.
alone.
They're in a childcare setting. They have responsible
Yeah.
adults around them. But
Listen. I okay, I mean, what when you're budget constrained, and you need childcare. Typically, I've seen people, they have found their way to what's available, and what's available a lot of times, and we're gonna get letters on this. I'm gonna say what's available a lot of times is in-home daycare. This is like taking your kid to a prison, as far as I'm concerned. Never, my friends who do first-time parents, never take your kids to in-home daycare, because you can't control. It's a porous region. You can't control who comes into the house, who leaves the house. You don't know what's going on there. I used to live next door to one. Never do this, please, please. But I'm asking people who are budget constrained, career restrained, what are you going to do? How are you going to deal with this? And it's a real serious problem.
and that's part of the problem too, is that there isn't support for, subsidies for childcare. Childcare, people that do it don't get paid really well. They don't have certification. They don't have trainings. It's a whole systemic thing. And again, we probably should do a whole Bad Boss brief on this. But I think the other thing too is to recognize that yes, things are different, but they also aren't, right? That
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
still, women do the majority of the housework, the majority of childcare, even women that make more than their spouse, right? And so I think the idea of being realistic about it, and a lot of times younger women will ask me about kind of career path, or, to give them advice. If you know you want to have kids, be intentional about it. And you know what?
mhm,
Go to work at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Go to work at, a Google or a Microsoft, and look at what is there. I mean,
mhm.
I have friends that have children because they worked at Microsoft because they could get their IVF paid for.
Yeah,
Right? I
yep,
mean, it's and so I think it's worth it. And if you are thinking about being a doctor, if you're thinking about working for yourself, be mindful of what the impact is going to be. And, maybe you have an arrangement with your spouse. Maybe your spouse can take some time off. Maybe, and so I think the idea is be realistic about the impact of having children on your career. And if you're starting out, there are some careers that are just much more friendly.
yep,
Ideally, finance and accounting, oddly,
yep,
and some
yep.
that are much less, like
Mm.
oddly healthcare. Anyway, a lot more here. Just one suggestion. There's a woman that I follow on Instagram. She's at the Working Momtras, Momtras, and she talks a lot about her experience with paid, with a lack of maternity leave, some political activity that she does.
Mm.
And she's worth following. I really like her perspective, and through her, I've seen a couple of other women that are politically active, that talk about what it's like to go back to work
Mm.
with 12 weeks. So get educated before that kid comes, and good luck.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
If you want to get our advice, please send us an email at wtf@badbossbrief.com. I read every single one, and you might show up here with your question. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Adios.